What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are going to talk all about consistency, and I know I'll go ahead and beat you to the comment section. Oh, Mr. YouTube man, I don't have to worry about being consistent. I'm consistently trash all the time. I understand how you feel. Been there, might still be there, but we want to talk about getting consistently better, finding consistently good scores out on the course, and that's what today's video is all about. One simple way that you can start doing that in your game. But before we dive in, we have to ask, how you doing today, Steven? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
So I love when new people find the channel because they'll be like, the video actually starts 4 minutes and 56 seconds into the video. Or they'll try to say something along the lines of, yes, this man gives me a 15-minute explanation to give me one tip. Really trim things down. I'm not gonna try to like bait you into this. I'm gonna give you really one thing that I think you could add, and then I'm gonna do what Robbie C does, and that is explain the thought, because we clicked on the video to explain the thought. So if you just want the nugget and you wanna run with it and try to figure it out on your own, fire away. I would love for you to be able to do that. I think one thing you could do to add consistency to your game is build routines. And we're not just talking routines on the putting green, we're talking routines all around your game. The more routines we have, the more we're gonna lock in those methods and practices, which is gonna allow us to find that consistency, so that way when we have a great round on the course, we can know what we did right, and we're building towards that consistent performance. So let's start with some examples. Now for many folks, your walk up to the tee when you're throwing tee shots, I understand that tee shots are gonna differ from hole to hole, but we can still somewhat bring a consistent flavor to it, because this is a real look at some of you on several tee boxes. Now these are meant to obviously be comedic examples of opportunities and different routines, but while I wish that they were entirely comedic, 100% from spending a lot of time walking with MA3 cards, I've seen all of it, including a real wacky one where someone did actually lick dirt. So while our tee shot is gonna differ, because not all holes, unless it's like a really poorly designed course, ask for the same type of tee shot with the same disc on every hole, our routine that we choose to use and walk through when it comes to developing and throwing on that hole can be the same across all of them, and it's gonna help add some consistency. Another place where we see a lot of lack of routine is where you guessed it, on the putting green. Too much chalk. Now, personally, I'm someone who's had a putting routine for a very long time. I feel like when I really started finding consistency in my putt and started really getting confidence in my putt, it's because I had that routine. Whether it came down to something where there was like high pressure putt situations, or even situations where it's like, oh man, I really need to make this. However you want to describe it. Even situations where I felt off and it was like, wow, why is my putt not going in? The routine that I had developed allowed me to fall back on this sort of comfort that I've built up by practicing my routine in the backyard. Now, did my routine initially start with me making every single putt? No, it certainly did not. So when building a routine, it's not necessarily that you want to start by focusing on the end result. We want to start by building something that's comfort and consistent in terms of, I can repeat this a lot, and it also doesn't take up an extreme amount of time. I can in fact almost guarantee you that when people watch the chalk routine that they were like, oh, Mr. YouTube man's taking shots at Gannon Burr. I'm not, because honestly, I think that Gannon, the chalk is part of his routine. He does this for comfort. If you watch his chalk patterns, very rarely does it feel like he actually deviates from the initial whap of the chalk to get the wind read and move through accordingly. Unless it's super nervy or he has like a really big putt, that's when he might switch things up a little bit. But I do want to talk a little bit later in the video about when you should deviate from your routines. Now, what's interesting is that it actually took a comment from one of you to point out something that I didn't realize, which was, even as a guy who preaches the importance of routines and finding it on the putting green, I did not have a routine when it came to my tee shots. My tee shots were kind of all over. Sometimes I would line up the shot for 2 or 3 sort of like air swings or shadow swings of, okay, here's where I want to release, and I would be thinking about putting my disc on a certain line. And then other times I would walk up and I would just step on the tee box and just kind of get loose, get comfortable up here, and then throw the shot. And I will never forget the comment, Robbie, it doesn't seem like you have a pre-shot routine on the tee box, and I think that could be why you feel so inconsistent off the tee, which is absolutely correct. So now when I build a routine, I'm always going to slow walk through the throw up to where I want the disc to release. I'm going to line it up on that spot and say, okay, here is the line that I'm looking for, sort of see the airwaves that I'm aiming for. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. I'm going to give like a nice firm plant, because for me, footing is absolutely key. I'm always afraid that I'm going to slip. And then once I do those two things, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to settle in for a deep breath, and it's off to the races. Now on the putting green, my routine is a lot more established because, like I said, I've been doing that routine for a lot longer. Situations like this, where it's actually a tap in, you may say, well, you don't really have a routine for that. And that's correct, because when I'm this close, want to make sure that, hey, I'm just not overthinking the putt. I'm not doing anything crazy. But even if I was backed up, let's say this far, this should still be a shot that with my bag on, I should be able to hit 10 times out of 10. But the littlest bit of doubt will creep into my mind. And because of that, when I'm even this far back, if people play with me, even casual rounds, I felt a little judgment before, because I am the guy that from this far out, I will still set my bag down and go through most of my routine, which is marking my shot, doing my 5 spins, coming through, re-rocking back, take a deep breath, think my happy thought, which is, man, it's going to be awesome when I make this putt, line it up, and boom. From farther away, I actually was centered up on the putt, versus when I had my bag on the other one, I was off to the right. Those little moments give me extreme confidence that, hey, I understand that it seems a little goofy that from that far out, I feel like I have to go through most of my routine. But at the same time, what's sillier to you as a competitor? Me going through that routine, or the heartache or disappointment of, wow, how did you miss a putt that was that close? So when you're building your routine, I want you to think about 3 key characteristics when it comes to that routine. The first is I want it to be simple. I want it to not have a ton of involved steps. It shouldn't involve drinking water from the fountain of youth. Shouldn't involve a resource that you usually are going to have a ton of. And I would be hesitant to involve a resource that is a limited quantity. This is why for most, I'm going to advise necessarily against always having a chalk bag, unless you have a sponsorship or things of that sort, or you have a lot of disposable income. Because what happens when the chalk runs out, or let's say you end up in the round and you don't have your chalk bag with you, I want the routines to involve something that if you bring your disc golf bag, or even if you borrow someone's bag, you're usually going to have all of those pieces with you. For instance, for me personally, outside of the disc, my standard routine only involves a mini marker on the putting green. And I know lots of people have mini markers. I personally keep 5 mini markers in my bag, just in case I happen to lose one of them, or someone else doesn't have a mini marker. The mini marker is probably the most extra thing outside of my additional, like just having a disc, that I use in my routine. I want it simple. Second is that I want it to be relatively short. On your disc golf throw, when you address your lie, according to the rules, you have 30 seconds from the time you address your lie until the time you should be throwing your shot. Anything outside of that is considered excessive. And I'll go ahead and tell you, I am all for using all of your 30 seconds. Like, I am that guy that if you want to use your 30 seconds to like really lean into that, go for it. But if you're someone who's going to use the full 30 seconds every time, you need to have that routine dialed to where you're not going over, because lots of folks are rarely going to use their full 30 seconds unless it's a shot that's really important or really complicated. And for that, there's a little bit of forgiveness socially when you've been a somewhat medium to quick player, and then on a longer shot, you can tell there's an importance added to it. However, if you're the person who uses the full 30 seconds every time, and then sometimes you're leaning over to 45 seconds, sometimes you're leaning over to 50 seconds, there's a lot less grace, and I can understand when people get upset by that because it is the rules. You have 30 seconds. We need to have some form of like urgency as we're going through the round. So my advice is, when I say it needs to be simple, but it also needs to be short, I would say building a routine that is about 10 seconds on average. And here's why I say 10 seconds. Sometimes complications are going to come up and that routine is going to be a little longer. Sometimes you're going to have some extra thoughts that you need to work through and that routine is going to be a little longer. If we have that 10 seconds, that leaves us twice the amount of time on top of that to actually modify and adapt, where our third aspect of building a routine comes into play, and that is space. So I've got my stopwatch right here, and I talked about what my routine is that I'm trying to do on a consistent basis when it comes to throwing my shot. I'm gonna walk through that routine with little complication, and I'm going to throw a shot just to see how it goes. So for examples, to just see how much the time would actually start, let's say that I wasn't first on the box. We've walked up, I've addressed my line, I've set my bag down, I've already pulled the disc that I think I'm gonna throw for this shot, because while the other person's throwing, that actually adds time that I don't have counted towards myself, that I can somewhat be thinking about this shot. Basket is about 320 feet all the way down there. I don't think I can get there with a dune, but I'm certainly gonna give it a chance because there is OB behind it. So I'm thinking about those factors as I'm addressing and sitting here waiting on the shot. We'll say that Justin's walking off the box and Justin's just throwing his shot, and Justin throws his shot. I'm next in order, which is going to start my time, and here we go. So with 13 seconds, that means that I have 17 seconds to play with, which means that if I get up there and I'm standing right here at about the 8-second mark and I feel this huge gust of wind come left to right, and I look down at the dune and I'm like, well, that's not it. We need to go to something a little faster. I can walk over, switch it out, grab my eagle, and I didn't hold on to it. I didn't focus on my elbow. Coach is ashamed. But I've created space. My routine is simple, it's repeatable, it's short, but it also has space in order to adapt. Let's go to the putting green. Now, these are not where my disc landed, but for a reference point, I want to talk about when it comes to my putting routine. So let's say my disc lands over here behind this tree. It curls in. So suddenly I have a little more complicated putt than I might have originally anticipated. Now, odds are I haven't practiced a lot of lean out around a tree sort of putts in my backyard when I'm working on my routine. But what I have practiced is just quite simply straddle putts. I know what my routine is when it comes to straddle putts because I've, surprise, surprise, practiced and built a routine. And once again, my routine is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spins in the hand. I'll separate, take a little breather, think my happy thought, man, it's gonna be awesome when we make this putt. Let out a breath of fresh air, address my lie, bring it up, and throw the putt. Where is the space inside of that? Well, you can probably guess exactly where it is. The space for me comes in thinking a happy thought, because at that moment, I'm gonna know whether I'm in a good space to continue moving forward with the routine, or if I need to take a longer breather. That is where the dance break actually works in. Remember, the point of routines is all about consistency. And personally, when I'm building those routines, when I talk about the space, most often I want that space to sort of be in 2 parts, because for the space for me, often that is part B of the entire routine. I have part A, which is the initial lead up and getting in position. Part B is the space to sort of process and get mentally in the right place. And then part C is the latter part of the routine, which is usually timed to be the exact same every single time I'm throwing. Part A of the space for my putting routine is going to be something along the lines of walking up, addressing my lie, marking it, and tossing the disc to the side. I'm never gonna toss it back to my bag. I'm never gonna hold on to it. I'm gonna make sure that I have the one. I will literally take a mini marker with me while I'm in my backyard, mark, toss, and do my whole routine. And I just practice that over and over again. I'm gonna spin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get my 5 tosses. Most of the time, I'm gonna do exactly that. I'm gonna separate, I'm gonna wipe my hand, and then I'm gonna reposition my grip because I know what my grip is. I'm gonna feel good here. And I'm gonna think the happy thought. Notice that my eyes are locked in on my putter the entire time. My eyes are down here, focused on it. I have not addressed or looked at the basket at all. Here, I'm just visualizing, because when I was walking up to the lie and I was spinning the disc, I was looking for the shape to the basket. So I come down here and I'm just visualizing that space, the ideal space that I already created with no other distractions in mind. And once I feel like I'm in a peaceful place, man, it's gonna be awesome to make this putt. I'm gonna settle in. I'm not frantic anymore. I'm not bouncing around. I'm not bringing the putter in and out. I'm not doing a whole bunch of practice strokes that are gonna change. It's just settling in and doing the process. And from here, my cadence is exactly this. I address my lie. It's up here, 1, 2, and boop, and I pop the putt. From the time that my head comes up, you could take all of my putts, bring them down. From the time this hits the top, this motion is almost the exact same speed across all of my putts, because it's exactly what I've worked on to build that part of the routine. The space comes in that middle part. So where does the dance break come in? If at any time during that routine something feels off or something feels bad and I'm trying to line it up and I can't get it dialed, I will then physically step away from the lie, because that's negative space. I'll gather myself back in, maybe do a little, it's not unusual to be loved by anyone, is usually what's playing in my head. I'll walk back up to the lie and I'll start the routine over real fast, which is another reason that you want to keep your routine short and simple, just in case you have to go through and restart it. If we're looking to be consistently better, we need to try to establish as many routines as possible that we can inside of our game. They don't have to be just tee box routines or putting green routines. These routines can even start from the moment you get out of the car, because I think some of you, when you pull up to a disc golf course, this is about what things look like. All right, here we go. First throw of the day. Up, here we go, y'all. Well, that didn't work. If we're not consistently stretching, if we're not consistently getting our body ready to perform, I think often we forget that this is a sport that we're trying to do, and we're trying to achieve athletic motions here. And guys, the more the body is stretched and primed, the better we're gonna perform out there. I actually cannot wait for you guys to see Thursday's video, which is part 2 of the Road to 450, where I've been working with Coach, and we've actually been doing a flexibility and mobility sort of training exercise that I've been doing every single day, and I feel like it's already helping me just feel more loose, which is causing even more, hopefully, power potential to come into the shots. Now that's overstable, and your boy did not trust that over defense. You guys saw it, I was talking. I didn't do my routine. I was gonna wrap it up for today's video. Routines are king, guys. If you are looking for that consistent improvement, finding more consistent routines is gonna be so important and clutch for you. Even in a situation like this, where I am actually putting, instead of putting with Wizards, I'm a little further away, so I'm putting with my polecat. I'm still gonna try to go through the same routine. Take a deep breath, happy thoughts. Man, it's gonna be awesome to make this putt. Didn't get it. That's why I'm actually a person that I feel like most often, if player number 2 goes and putts, I might be one of the rare individuals that player 2 actually makes less putts for me than player 1 does, because player 2 didn't get the benefit of the routine. So I would love to know, what are some routines that you have in your disc golf game besides I routinely miss putts? Once again, I'm anticipating all the little jokes you guys got in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. And if this video was helpful, feel free to do all the YouTube things. I'm not gonna say them, but if it was, you know how to support the channel in the YouTube way. Everyone else tells you how to do it. So thanks so much for watching. But for now, we're gonna leave you with the bird.